Franchising is a business.
Franchising is a business, it's
Yeah.
a method of doing business.
Yeah.
And how you deal with people, either you just have developed yourself over many years of relations, or you get some guidance. But it's no magic.
Yeah.
Did you ask the franchisee about problems that they may have had trying to deal with the system and the operations? There's no discourse between the high management person representing the franchisor and the franchisee, who often, by the way, is surprised because a lot of these visits are not scheduled.
Welcome back. We are here for another great conversation on Hot Perspectives, the show. I am thrilled to have my guest today, Frank Zaid. We call him the Dean of Franchising in our industry here. I'll tell you a little bit about how I met Frank. It had to have been last year at the convention, or maybe it was earlier this year.
No, it was the convention last year.
Last year's convention, yes. So last year at the Canadian Franchise Association convention, I was attending a seminar, and the seminar was on franchisor relationships and conflict management and how to resolve issues with franchisees and systems. And you weren't on the panel. You were in the audience, and you stood up, and I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was profound. And I said to myself, I need to meet that guy. I need to have a conversation with him. He's someone I want to learn from. And since then, I've just been learning from you, having great conversations, and running into you at other CFA events. And I'm so happy to have you on the show, all to myself, to teach the people a little bit about what you do and the impact that you've made on franchising here in Canada. So welcome, and
you.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
As Maliesa said, we met at the convention last year. I was asked actually by one of the moderators of the panel to speak a bit about resolving franchise disputes. And I'm sure we're going to talk about this today. But anyways, I spoke from experience and the heart about why there are disputes and why they should be resolved. And I guess I made an impression, which is very kind of you. And I thank you very much for having me here. I look forward to lots of good conversation.
Me too. And for the people who don't know who you are you? What is it that you do?
Well, I'll make it short. I've been in franchising for almost 50 years. And I got involved in the the middle 1970s. I was a lawyer. I had just started practicing with a big law firm, and I was involved in intellectual property. Nobody knew anything about franchises. Franchises meant the Toronto Maple Leafs or Consumers Gas.
Wow.
And anyway, we got two small franchisors coming up from the United States to Canada. They wanted to have somebody help them. The partners came to me and said, I don't know anything about this. You're the trademarks guy, so you figure it out. And that really...
Sink or swim.
That really was the start. I loved it. I was dealing with entrepreneurs. They were exciting. I was able to deal directly with clients, and I started to learn about franchising, attending the CFA and IFA conferences, writing papers, just going out and promoting myself to an audience that really didn't know what was available in Canada.
Right.
And it just blossomed, and I ended up 35 years later, when I retired from practicing law, with a very significant franchise practice that I left behind to the firm. I had worked with 400 franchise systems.
Wow.
In my career.
Wow.
I was on the board of directors of a number of franchisors. I was the general manager of a number of franchisee associations. So I was very fortunate. I learned the business of franchising. The law was there, but to understand the business
Yes.
and how franchising works in various diverse segments, that's what it takes really to be an advisor.
I love that. I love that. And I'm gonna brag on you a little bit here by showing the people this beauty right here. Lifetime Achievement Award. Y'all see that? Lifetime Achievement Award. Awarded to you by the Canadian Franchise Association all the way back in 2009. Wow.
That, I had many achievements and many acknowledgments and accolades, but this one means the most to me because I was selected by peers of the industry to get this award. I was the first person to get it.
Wow.
And I've always believed in ethical franchising, and that's why I stay, why I try to help young franchisors and people in the industry, because I've witnessed unethical franchising. And in fact, the reason why franchise laws were enacted in Canada was back in the early 70s. There were a bunch of unethical franchisors that came up to Alberta, and it was quite a bad scene in terms of people losing money. Yeah. And Alberta was the first province to have franchise legislation. Now we've got 7 in total in Canada.
Yes. Wow. Well,
so
what an introduction, and congratulations. I know you've been hanging on to it for a while, but congratulations on that award. Amazing accomplishment. So we're going to get into it. We have questions and we need to get to them. So I know this is your first time on the show. I know you're a fan. So just a quick reminder of how this works is I got the little red baggie with our questions, and we'll go one by one. We spend about 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes unpacking the questions. We don't mention brands because we're here just to give our own personal views, have an honest, open, and transparent conversation, exploring franchisee-franchisor relationships, and hopefully the people learn something.
Great.
All right. So you pick the question, hand it over to me, and I'll read it out.
If I pick one I don't like, can I put it back?
They're all good, so... Yeah, hand it over here, Frank. Hand it over. Okay, so first question. I know you have a ton of experience supporting both franchisees, franchisors, resolving issues, conflict, concerns. What, in your opinion, are some of the most common areas of concerns for franchisees against franchisors?
Okay. Actually, Maliesa, I didn't mention that after I retired from practicing law, or just shortly before, I became trained as a mediator and arbitrator.
Okay.
And I've been doing that for 15 years now. I think I'm the only person in the country that has the franchising background I have, who is a mediator and arbitrator. And I've learned an awful lot because mediators try to help the parties resolve disputes. Arbitrators are like judges in a private court, and they make decisions. So what are some of the things that cause the problems?
Yes.
Well, there are issues on both sides of the fence. Let's talk about franchisors. What are the common issues that franchisors have that end up in disputes? Well, one of them is that too many franchisors are not properly capitalized. They don't have much money. They have an idea. They've run a store. They decide, hey, this is great. I'm going to franchise. They haven't looked at the economics. They haven't looked at the operations. They haven't thought about training. They just go out and sell franchises, and they live off the sales. Well, sometimes the sales stop. And sometimes the early franchisees don't make it financially, or they're not getting any education or any support from the franchisors. So that's one of the common issues for franchisors. Another,
I think that's an important one because it takes investment to continue to grow a brand, and franchisors have to be well capitalized to do that. They can't solely rely on, let's say, royalties or collecting franchise fees. They have to still have something to give back to the business. So I think that's a good one, because there's a lot of emerging brands coming up that might have 2 or 3 locations that are doing very well, maybe corporately owned, and are thinking about franchising. So I'm glad that you brought that part up.
And some of these startup franchisors don't have a team. They don't have a proper management team. I appreciate that it takes money to hire people, but a CEO or a founder is not usually in a position to be able to grow a system dealing with other people.
Right.
That person may have grown his or her system alone because they know the industry they're in. But when you have an arm's length relationship with franchisees, it's much different in the way that relationship has to work. And that really takes me to the second thing that causes disputes, is bad relations. And bad relations happen for many reasons. One of them, and I preach this all the time, is lack of or poor communication.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got franchisees that have bought a franchise, they've invested their life savings, they're trying to operate a new business. And once the deal is closed, franchisors ignore them. Now, I don't mean to say, we're not here talking about franchising is a bad industry. It's a wonderful industry.
Absolutely.
And it has great success stories, and it creates livelihood for many people.
Absolutely.
But we're really talking about the situations to avoid.
Yes.
And bad communications, when franchisees don't get any support or don't know what to do in a particular situation, and there's nobody there to help them, that ends up developing into a bad relationship.
Yeah.
And communications, there's so many ways that franchisors can communicate, but they have to communicate. They've got to communicate electronically. They have to have manuals. They have to have meetings. They have to have conventions. They have to have field reps who are out dealing with the franchisees. And if they're not prepared to do that, then franchising is the wrong business for them.
I love that. I love that you gave some examples of the different ways to communicate, because having worked for several franchisors myself, sometimes we rely too heavily on one form of communication, whether that is every update we have as a system goes out in a newsletter. Well, you need a little bit more than that. Sometimes you have to pick up the phone. Sometimes you have to have a town hall meeting. Sometimes you have to bring franchisees together to collectively speak about what the challenges are and collaborate on a solution to move forward. So I love that you touched on kind of the different ways we can, franchisors can communicate better with their franchisees.
I was involved for many years with a very significant franchisor in this particular industry. They had 345 franchises across the country. And the CEO made it a point that he would personally visit every one of those franchisees at least once a year.
Wow.
Now, you can do that through town hall meetings, regional meetings, whatever. Always made sure that there was personal contact.
I love that. Okay. So you mentioned being well capitalized, communication. Is there any other one that's really important and high up on the list?
Well, you would appreciate this training.
Yeah.
The people who start franchises are not necessarily trained. They are entrepreneurs, they're operators, but they're not trained in the relationship that they're going to be getting into in franchising. And that means being honestly minded with your franchisees. That means accepting responsibility. It means listening. Listening's a big thing.
Yes.
And they should be trained. But more importantly, the people that they're hiring to interface with the franchisees need to be trained.
Yes.
And I know training is a big word, but there are ways to encourage participation. There are ways to listen. There are ways to get ideas from the franchisees. And they should be aware of that, because that's the kind of relationship that they have to develop in order to have their system succeed.
Yeah, I'm glad you know how passionate I am about training, because we talk about training all the time and the importance of it. I'd love to see more feedback loops incorporated into training. It shouldn't just be a one and done. It shouldn't just be a checkbox to say, hey, we've trained you on this, you've completed your 2 weeks or whatever of training, good luck and out the door. There needs to be an opportunity to feedback to say, hey, did you get what you were supposed to get out of the training? Are there any other areas that maybe you'd like to spend a little bit more time on? Maybe there's also re-hitting important pieces. For example, we've worked with a lot of food, restaurant franchises. How often are you talking about food safety, right? Is it once a year? Is it only when you join? 5 years ago, you haven't talked about food safety since. It has to be built into the culture and revisited often. And so thank you for bringing up training. I also want to talk a little bit about access to training for frontline team members, because the franchise industry, I like to say, is an ecosystem, right? There's all kinds of moving parts. It definitely isn't franchisor in the middle and then franchisee over here. It's a whole ecosystem of suppliers, customers, their extended team members, even R&D. Like there's a lot of just different parts that make the system work. And a key part that you mentioned there was, how do you teach people to build relationships with their stakeholders, franchisees with their team members, franchisees with vendors? How do you train people on being better communicators outside of the franchisee-franchisor relationship and extend it into the rest of the ecosystem?
Well, I know that there are people like yourself who are experts in training, and certainly franchisors can consult those types of people to get an idea of what programs would be made available. I think, though, that it can't be a cookie box type of operation. You can't send and I've seen this done so often, field manager, it's time for you to go out to Calgary and go see the 4 franchisees out there and take your checklist and go and check the box on everything and see how they're doing. So field manager comes back and says, oh, he only scored 65 out of 100. And he's not running the operation the way it's supposed to be run. Well, did you, Mr. Field Manager, talk to the franchisee about that, or are you just collecting check boxes? Did you ask the franchisee about problems that they may have had trying to deal with the system and the operations? So there's no discourse between the high management person representing the franchisor and the franchisee, who often, by the way, is surprised because a lot of these visits are not scheduled.
Yes. Surprise! We're here!
Reminds me when I was in grade school, and the teacher would say, we have to clean up the room now and get everything tidy because the inspector's coming tomorrow. That's not the way franchise field visits work.
That actually just jogged a memory for me. I did an article once, and it was called The Dog and Pony Show. And that's what we call it sometimes, at the franchise level. It's, got to clean everything up. You got to prepare everything. And it's not a true reflection of the day-to-day operation. It's not a true reflection of the business. And I think franchisors can utilize those pop-up surprise visits in a more constructive way, not just to tear people down, to say, hey, you're not running the business well, but to your point, to encourage better conversations, to get down to root causes of the issues and come up with solutions that are long-lasting and impactful.
And all of this really goes to what constitutes a good franchise or franchisee relationship. And, we can throw out a number of different taglines, but in my view, Communications are very critical to a good relationship. Honesty, fairness, and listening.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you think of what I just said, that's about business.
Yeah.
It's not just franchising.
Yeah.
You
Franchising is a business.
Franchising is a business, it's
Yeah.
a method of doing business.
Yeah.
And how you deal with people, either you just have developed yourself over many years of relations, or you get some guidance. But it's no magic.
Yeah. If you enjoyed the conversation and are curious to learn more about franchising, like, follow, share, and subscribe to the channel.